Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. You know how we're always talking about how to make organizations better at actually achieving their goals? Well, today we're diving deep into that.
Yeah, we are. And we've got some really great material to work with today. It's capacity strengthening training materials made specifically for community-based organizations.
It is. And it was put together by the Southern Africa Litigation Centre, SALC.
That's right, SALC.
And their guidance is really excellent. And while they're aiming it at CBOs, the core ideas are useful for, honestly, just about any type of organization. I mean, even if you're not a nonprofit, this stuff's useful.
Oh, for sure. I was thinking that as I was looking this over.
Yeah. So in this deep dive, we're going to pull out those key lessons, really break them down so you can think strategically about where you want your organization to go and, how to make it happen, how to really get that impact maximized.
Seems good.
Let's start with strategic planning.
All right. The SALC material is really clear on this. The point of a strategic plan is to define your organization's purpose. Like, what is your core mission?
Your reason for being.
Exactly. And that becomes your filter. It lets you cut through the noise and distractions and focus on what truly matters. It's like, think of it this way. Your organization's trying to make its way through a crowded marketplace of ideas and demands. It can be really overwhelming out there.
It can.
The strategic plan, that's your internal compass. It always guides you back to your true north.
It's a nice analogy, a compass for organizations. And something this SALC material really stresses is a strategic plan isn't something you write once and then stick in a drawer. It's got to be a living thing.
100%. It's a living document. You're constantly referring to it. It's like a roadmap that informs everything you do day to day. Are the projects you're working on actually getting you closer to your long-term goals? The strategic plan keeps you honest.
Keeps you on track. It's got to be invaluable when you've got to make choices. I mean, every organization has limited resources. Let's say you've got tons of opportunities, but you can't do them all. How do you pick what to prioritize?
That's where the strategic plan really shows its value. It provides that clear framework for decision-making, those tough decisions, no more agonizing, because you can see very clearly how everything aligns with your overall goals. And actually, the SALC material points out that this then flows into your operational plan.
Makes sense to me.
So the strategic plan sets the big picture, the why and the what's, and then the operational plan is the how, like the specific steps you take.
So it's like the strategic plan is the inspiration and the operational plan is the perspiration.
I like that. Very good.
Yeah. And, beyond the internal stuff, this SALC material also talks about accountability, something that I think a lot of organizations struggle with. So how does the strategic plan tie into that?
Well, if you have a clearly articulated strategic plan that sets clear expectations, both for your internal team and for your stakeholders, everybody knows what the goal is, what we're working toward. It's like a yardstick,
You can measure your progress against it.
Exactly. That's accountability right there. And it creates this culture of accountability within the organization. Not just that, though. By clearly stating your purpose, your priorities, you build trust with your stakeholders, with the community, with your funders. It reinforces the integrity of the organization. People know what you stand for.
Transparency is huge these days.
It is. And the SALC training has this great line, "A goal is a wish without a plan."
Catchy.
Right. It just drives home the point that action matters. Dreaming about what you want to achieve, that's great, but that's not enough.
Right. Everyone dreams. Not everyone does.
Right. You have to have that plan to turn your dreams into reality. And the material really digs into this, emphasizing that strategic planning, it's the process that turns those aspirations into results. And they make a really interesting observation. They say that while lots of organizations, of course, they have good intentions.
Everyone has good intention.
They often lack a systematic approach to planning. They don't have that structure, that methodology to actually get things done. So it's the difference between, say, we want to grow versus actually mapping out how you're going to grow.
I like that distinction. It's the thoughtfulness behind it, right? It's the difference between just having a vague wish and a concrete plan for action. And honestly, I think that's what separates successful organizations from the ones that, just kind of muddle along.
Yeah. And the SALC material connects that back to the organization's mission. They say every single activity, every single initiative, it should be a step towards that core purpose. Everything has to be intentional.
It's about aligning your actions with your values. And there's another interesting point in here. They suggest getting feedback from the community you serve. They even suggest doing surveys to understand how people perceive your work. I think that's a really smart move.
Yeah. That outside perspective, it's so valuable. It gives you context. It might highlight some successes you're not even aware of, or maybe there's a disconnect between what you're trying to do and what the community is actually experiencing. That feedback, that can really shape your strategic priorities.
It's a reality check.
Yeah.
And it allows you to course correct.
Yeah.
Make sure you're actually meeting the needs you're trying to address.
Right. Maybe you think your outreach is fantastic, but the community tells you the information isn't reaching the right people.
That's a huge insight.
Yeah. And it would let you revamp your outreach strategy.
That's awesome. Now, the SALC training goes on to introduce a tool that's pretty familiar to a lot of folks, but it's worth revisiting. SWOT analysis. Can you give us a quick rundown of what that means?
Absolutely. SWOT. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a really structured way to analyze what's going on, both inside your organization, that's the strengths and weaknesses, and outside of it, the opportunities and the threats, basically. What are we good at? What are we not so good at? What are the exciting possibilities out there? And what are the things we need to be prepared for?
And the SALC material makes a good point about the difference between those internal and external factors, right? They emphasize that strengths and weaknesses, those are things you can control, at least to some extent.
You have influence over them.
Yeah. But opportunities and threats, those are external. You can't control them, but you can try to prepare for them.
Exactly. And knowing that distinction, that's really important for how you approach each category. Internal factors, well, you can improve them.
Or capitalize on them.
Right. But external factors, you need to adapt your strategies. Maybe take advantage of an opportunity or figure out how to deal with a potential threat. So knowing the difference, it helps you plan better, more effectively.
So let's say you've gone through the whole SWOT process. You've got a good handle on your strengths, your weaknesses, all that. How does that feed into the actual strategic plan, according to this SALC material?
So the whole point of the SWOT analysis is to come up with strategies that get you to your goals.
Makes sense to me.
And the SALC material is really clear. The strategies, they have to align with your mission and vision. Everything flows from that.
So it's like a cascade. It all starts with that core identity. What else does the SALC material recommend?
They talk about setting targets in reverse order. I thought that was interesting.
What does that mean? Reverse order.
So instead of starting with where you are now, you start with where you want to be in a year. Like, what's the specific measurable outcome you're shooting for?
So you start with the end in mind.
You got it. And then you work backward. Break that big goal down into smaller, more manageable targets for each month. It's really practical, I think. You can see the steps.
Makes it less daunting, right? You're not trying to climb Mount Everest all at once. You're taking it base camp by base camp.
I like that analogy. And they give some specific areas that the plan should address.
Such as?
Well, they talk about growth of profile. That basically means getting your organization more visibility, becoming more well-known, outreach impact, making a difference, having a measurable positive effect. Then there's internal stuff like training and capacity building, making sure your team has the skills they need.
Invest in your people.
Exactly. And then, last but not least, funding. Got to make sure the organization can keep the lights on. It's all interconnected.
It's the whole picture.
Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up here, let's tie it all together. The SWOT elements, how do they work together in practice?
Okay, so remember, the SLC material says your strengths. Those can help you overcome your weaknesses. You can leverage what you're good at to address the areas where you need improvement.
Right, makes sense.
And the opportunities you identify, those can actually help you mitigate the threats. It's about being strategic,
Right.
Using your understanding of both the internal and external landscape to your advantage.
So it's not just about identifying these things in isolation. It's about seeing the connections between them. And using those connections to create a plan that's robust and effective. So, final takeaway message from this SALC training. What's the big idea about the strategic plan itself? What's its purpose?
It's pretty simple, actually. The strategic plan, it's your roadmap. It's what guides you, keeps you on track, helps you evaluate your progress, and ultimately, it's what allows you to achieve your targets and, ultimately fulfill your mission.
It all comes back to that mission.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. And actually, for folks out there who are working directly with SALC, this is just the tip of the iceberg. They have a full in-depth training course on all of this.
Yeah. So if you want to dive even deeper, check that out.
So for everyone listening, no matter what kind of organization you're involved with, I think the big lesson here from SALC is a strategic plan isn't just a bunch of paperwork.
It's not busy work.
It's not. It's really the foundation for being effective, for making a difference in the world.
Right. It clarifies your goals, it gives you direction, and it empowers you to make strategic choices.
Absolutely. So here's a thought I'll leave you with. Think about the most important goal for your organization right now. What's your one-year target? Where do you want to be a year from now? And then work backward. What are the concrete, measurable steps you can take each month to get there? It's about moving from those, vague good intentions to real strategic action.
Great advice.
Thanks for joining us for the deep dive. See you next time.
See ya.